Blueprinting is the most important unique selling point of Tridion Sites. It is used everywhere across the CMS. Blueprinting is how we organize the content in multiple repositories so that we can reuse that content as much as possible in multiple websites, multiple markets, multiple brands, and multiple channels. Let's look at the result of using blueprinting to manage a multilingual set of websites. Here we have a demonstration website for Acadian Solar with some product offerings, a campaign banner, and some press releases. If we look at the same website in the context of a different country site, for example, the French market, you will see that we are reusing as much as possible from the English website, but with slight variations. So the banner here is the same in terms of media asset, but the text has been translated in French. And also we added additional information for the European market here. As I scroll down, we are reusing all the product information and translating the content. So we can adapt the tone of voice to a particular market. And here we see a different image for this particular campaign. But all the press releases are reused and translated as well. Now let's look at the French-Canadian market. Again, here we are reusing the media asset for the banner. The text is translated slightly differently from the French market here to adapt it to Canada. And also we have a Canadian flag and a specific notation here saying that this is the favorite brand of Canadians. Now the products might be the same in this market or different. This can also be localized. And here we have again a localized campaign just for the Canadian market, while the press releases are reused and simply translated. Let's look now at the Chinese market. In this case, we're completely changing the look and feel of the page and really changing the whole banner, but we can still keep the text the same, like a textual literal translation, and that originated from the English corporate site, but the media asset is changed or localized in this case. All the rest is reused and translated as is. So you can see that instead of starting from scratch for every country site, we are reusing as much as possible of the information we have and making the local changes, local tweaks to the tone of voice, to the content itself, to the media assets, and we can even create local pages just relevant for a particular market, of course. Now let's look at how Tridion Sites exposes that blueprinting information throughout the user interface. So here I am in Experience Manager, and I can right-click on any piece of content and see where it's used across the blueprint structure. So we can see right away that this appears in multiple home pages in various markets, German, French, Chinese, and we have localized copies of this banner component, which means it has been translated or the tone of voice has been changed for all these different markets here. We can see what this content is comprised of and where it has been published to as well, to the different markets in different renditions, maybe a mobile version, etc. So this is very handy to see when we make a change to the content, we can directly know what will be affected by this change. And when we publish content, it will update wherever it's used in the different pages. That makes it easy for editors to maintain the content over time, and they can always go back to the parent item. So what I mean by parent is that we have a structure, really a parent-child relationship for the content organization. So we start in the master where we define content types and taxonomies, and then we can have multiple brands, repositories here, and for each brand we can have generally a translation layer in the blueprint where we inherit everything from the English content and then we localize the pieces of content to translate them here in Spanish, German, French, Chinese, French-Canadian, etc. And then as it flows down this diagram, we have a website definition for the corporate English website. with certain site sections and pages predefined here. And we can reuse that structure across different sites. So we don't have to recreate those pages necessarily. We can reuse the existing sections and pages from the corporate site and add additional pages just for the Spanish website or Spanish market. And even for the French market here, we can also create additional pages just for France and reuse those pages for the French-Canadian market eventually. So that means that the French-Canadian market or website can be created extremely fast because it's based on the French site, and then we just make the necessary tweaks for that particular market, get the translation from the French-Canadian repository, and we're good to go. We can publish this website in no time. So that's really the power of blueprinting, is to be able to create multiple sites and reuse as many assets as possible from the Tridion Sites repository. If I move to the experience space user interface in Sites 9.5, we can see also that blueprinting is everywhere. So we have here the blueprint structure in a flat representation. We can filter out to a particular market or set of markets that we want to work in. If we go into the content folders, we have the ability to localize folders as well and metadata on folders if we want to organize the content differently in different markets or for different teams in different geolocations. For each piece of content that we have here, we can get more information, including the blueprinting information here. So we know where this content has been localized, meaning translated or adapted to a particular market here. Therefore, if we jump to one of these content repositories with the localized content, we can see here the content in German. And we could make changes to it as well, right? I could open this piece of content and edit it if I want to change that translation or add content to it. Or I can go back to the parent and jump to another translated version. Here we have the French content, etc. And it's reused within the website, the English corporate site. I can quickly jump to that site, and from there I can publish the content to the website itself. So very easy to navigate through the blueprint structure in this user interface. And again, we can find the where used options to see where the content has been reused across possibly different pages. This is only one page, but you might have several ones, and what it's comprised of. And finally, you can see where the content has been published to different targets, staging, live, QA, etc. And which websites or channels and markets are going to be listed here as well. So you have a clear view of where that content is used and published, and you can very easily make changes and apply those changes to multiple markets very fast. So I can actually publish this content here and choose which markets I want to publish to, so which updates I want to propagate to the different websites just by clicking these options here. On top of this, blueprinting also applies to categories and keywords, workflow, processes. So you might have a legal review step that only applies to the French market or the UK market, etc. And you can configure those in the system also. And taxonomies might be translated or adapted to particular markets. So that makes it very efficient for global corporations to manage constellation of websites, constellation of brands and channels, and reuse as much content as possible. That's where Tridion really makes a difference. What's also interesting is that if we look at external assets, blueprinting also applies to external pieces of content. So here I'm opening digital asset stored in Aprimo, which is an external system we have a connector for. And we have access to the external metadata, and we can see the description is translated, which can be the alt text that you want to display on your site, for example. So that has been translated, and we're retrieving the right language thanks to the blueprinting structure, and we can do that mapping with external tools this way. So as you can see, blueprinting is extremely powerful to manage multilingual experiences across a multitude of brands, channels, devices, and really adapt the content to tailor the messaging to the right market. Let's look at a quick example of how to use blueprinting by creating a new web page and localize it for the French website. Right, so we can quickly create content, change images, etc., and finish our edits. And then we'll be able to publish this page to multiple markets. So here we can publish to all child websites, and in the new experience space interface, we can actually publish to selective markets as well. Okay, now it's published. I can go to the same page on the French website now. And here I have already the English page available. So from there on, we can either send the content for translation through SDL translation technologies, or we can directly localize the content. So I can localize the page itself or just a particular component on this page. If I want to move things around on the page but reuse the same elements, I can just localize the page. And if I want to change content specifically, then I can localize a piece of content here. So let's localize this banner. So now we have our French text and a different image just for the French website. So that's an example of blueprinting, and we can come back to the English side. Our changes are not applied here thanks to blueprinting. We only see our localizations wherever they are made. So that's really nice. And we can actually see in where used, we will be able to identify this change that we made. Just for the French market, we have that local copy. But the page structure is reused, so we haven't changed or localized that page specifically, only the banner component within that page. So that brings some flexibility as well. To summarize, the blueprinting benefits in Tridion Sites are faster time to market and easier content maintenance over time, better brand consistency and control, outstanding translation process through our SDL translation technologies, seamless integration, and overall massive productivity gains for global companies managing many digital channels and brands.